Good morning, women of the heart. My name is Cherie Gale, and it is my pleasure and my honor to be able to speak to you this morning. I love the church that meets there in Hartford, and as you may know, some of you, I was there for 3 years, a long time ago, or what feels like a long time ago, and some of my nearest and dearest friends in the whole wide world live there, and you know who you are. So I'm going to dive right in today, and we're going to do a study together. And really consider this a study and not a lesson, as we explore something that I consider to be pretty significant. And so, if we're going by titles, I've titled this "Least in My Family." Least in my family. The humiliating price of singleness and the glorious power of unity with God. So I'm going to dive right in and just draw our attention to a few things. So we live in communities where our lives are meant to follow certain scripts. As an adult living in America, we follow centuries-old playbooks and scripts. One certain script dictates that barring grave illness or death, men and women should expect to marry at some point in their lives. In our religious context, studies have shown that approximately 74% or so of people do before their 35th birthday. If they get married, they do it before their 35th birthday. So what does this mean then? Well, it means that being single after a particular age, and we're going to focus in on this age 35. So from here on out, when I mention being single, I mean being single 35 and older. Being single 35 and older, it does not cohere, it doesn't align with our script, with our American script that we've been given, or our American playbook. It is a defection, it is an aberration from what currently is and has been the status quo. If these scripts, or if this script in particular, the script about when we marry, if it is meant to paint a picture for us of what it looks like or what it should look like to live the best life possible, singlehood and being single is not a viable lifetime option for living that life. Singlehood is not a route to flourishing. In our context within the International Churches of Christ, or the ICOC, the fellowship that we are all a part of, singlehood has historically suffered from this particular cultural ethos. To be single was discouraged. In many ways, it was disdained. And quite frankly, it was devalued. Our collective posture towards singlehood has a history. It comes encoded with a certain DNA, and the legacy that from which we get this attitude towards singlehood is a remnant that we inherited and that was informed by centuries-old Reformation debates and arguments. The aversion to the solitary life comes as a result of a victory that happened centuries ago, and I'll speak about this later. So as we look at our churches today, though we may see on our rosters equal parts single adults and equal parts marrieds, so singles of all ages and stages of life, mature leadership will more often than not be synonymous with married leadership. If we sort of extend our gaze outward and look at our culture here, and we're talking about an American context, we only have 1.5, so 1.5 of our presidents who were single. So the zenith of leadership in the culture dictates marriage. The propagation of this message, it sends or it communicates this thought that to be single then is to be arrested, it is to be immature, and it is to be stunted in your spiritual development, in your ascending the level of development. It communicates that there is something wrong with you. It asks the question, why aren't you being chosen? Why haven't you advanced through this particular rite of passage? Why haven't you attained true adulthood? And why haven't you moved on or moved into true maturity? The position of the single person over a particular age within the church community may then be described as the least in the family of God. And I get this phrasing from Judges 6, verse 15, where Gideon, when called by an angel to save Israel, he responds asking the angel, but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family. The internalization of these messages that get generated within and outside the church, they act then in such a way that singleness becomes so abnormal, so foreign, and so strange, we are terrified of it. It must be avoided at all costs, and marriage must be pursued at all costs, even at the costs of our souls. Women, this is a problem. This is a problem since the cultural mindset generating this idea is not a biblical mindset. It is a problem because of the devastating message it relays and oftentimes the traumatizing effect it has on the single person's spirit and their psyche. It is a problem since our culture doesn't reward singleness, and many of us chase after cultural rewards at the expense of godly reward. We have a problem. This study today then sees itself as a reclaiming, a re-envisioning, and a reimagining of that title, the least. I'm going to look at 3 things today as we explore. The 3 things are the trap of extremes, the joy in the decrease, and God's favor to the least. The trap of extremes, the joy in decrease, and God's favor to the least. As we continue, I'm going to make certain caveats. So this is not a study on how to date and find the perfect guy. But if that's what you want, I pray for you. I pray for all of us if that's what we want. Amen. God's will and name be praised. This is not a lesson or a study on why marriage is evil. It is not. It is a blessing from God. This is a lesson that is choosing to look specifically at singlehood, not at the expense of some other state in life, just to focus and look at this particular thing. So let's dive in. Let's look at the trap of extreme, pitting celibacy as an opponent or as an enemy to marriage.